What if you paid everybody in your business the exact same amount, including yourself? Would that work? Let's talk about it. This video is brought to you by Shop-Ware. It's the shop management system that I use. It's the shop management system Lucas uses. We absolutely love it. And if you click on the link in the description, then you can get a demo for yourself. And we think that you will love it just as much as we do. And if you don't, well, I don't know what to tell you. You probably put ranch dressing on all your food, in which case, there is no help for you. So a huge thank you to Shop-Ware, and now onto the video. So I came across this reel, and I wanted to get your opinion of it.
Okay, let's watch it.
I'm a small business owner, and it kills me that I still see other small business owners talking about how nobody wants to work anymore and there's a labor shortage. Every single day, my inbox, my emails, my comment section, full of people asking for a job. I get resumes, I get cover letters, I get people offering to bake me food. So if you're a small business owner and you're still wondering how you get people to want to work at your company, I'm going to explain to you one simple trick. First thing you're going to do is take your total payroll cost. You can use last year's P&L if you want. Be sure to include your own wages and also the amount from profit you took as your distribution last year. Total that all up. Now, divide it by the total number of employees you have, including yourself. Whatever you got as the answer, just pay everybody at your company that amount. No, seriously. Everyone just gets an equal wage, even yourself. And if you look at that number and you're like, I can't afford to live off of this, I got to remind you how averages work, because that means that you've been trying to get other people to live off of even less than that. We did this in my company. It's been awesome. Everybody earns over $50 an hour before taxes, or a take-home pay of $37 and some change every hour. Similarly, we also distributed the benefits equally, fully paid health insurance, top tier, reimbursement.
Was that it?
No, I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure that's it's only a minute long on Facebook.
Oh, it's only on Facebook. You've pulled up the wrong social media platform. Where's the TikTok, bro?
For out-of-pocket mental health care, unlimited paid sick time, paid vacation leave as much as you want. You know all those fun perks you get as the owner of the business too? Like getting to use your corporate company cards, free airline miles to book your own vacations? Yeah, I just do that for them too. Now everybody gets to use the company airline miles to book their vacation. Like half of my office is going to Europe this summer. And then when you have a ton of profit, like a really boom year, like we did last year, we just bought everybody who worked there a new car. It's not hard. Every company could be doing this. People just don't want to work for you because you're kind of a selfish asshole.
How do you feel about that?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I'd get a raise. I'd love it. It'd be great.
I know, me
Save
too.
money.
Me too. I'd get more money. So I think it's built on the premise that we look at corporate America, right? And we see these big CEOs stuffing hundreds of millions of dollars in their pockets. And I think it's kind of built on that, and I think that's who the video speaks to.
There are plenty of owners, though, that are taking home a ton of money.
Yeah.
And also complaining that they can't find employees.
I
they're the
have
ones
a hard time
pulling
connecting with that, though. Right?
Yeah.
Because I don't do that. So it's hard for me to see that.
Yeah. Well, we don't do it. I know most of the people that we talk to don't do it. But there's, I was listening back to the podcast that we did, our 50th episode that we did with Flat Rate Tech podcast guy, right? Yeah. And he was considering opening his own shop. And the idea was, the owner pulls up in his Denali, throws the keys at the tech and says, hey, I know you're slow, so do the oil change on my truck. Right. Meanwhile, that guy's on flat rate, and he's like, well, I'm going to get paid 0.3 for this oil change, and that's all I'm going to earn today. Right. Meanwhile, the owner pulls up in his Denali knowing that he doesn't have to pay his employees at all or very much that week because they're slow. It's whatever. And I could see the animosity in that.
I think the biggest thing that I see, right, when we talk about this, there's a lot of shops that do some form of profit sharing. I think the shops that are paying the owner more, the owner's going to say, but I'm taking a ton of liability, right? And that's true. They are taking more liability than the employees are, right? Because they've got everything on the line. The employee can leave today and go get a job. So I understand that logic. I really do. I also understand the logic that We should pay our people fairly. I think that's very, very important. We should be paying our people fairly. I mean, what's to stop her from saying later that she wants more money and she's just going to nix X employees, right? Let's cut a few employees out of this, and it's going to bring everybody's salary up. And I'm not saying she would do that, but I think for me, the idea of sharing fairly with everybody from the fruits of the labor of the shop is a good idea. It's something I've thought about doing. I don't think I'm going to do it in this way. Okay. In other words, we can share the fruits of the labor when the business is profitable. And so my idea of doing this is off of a net profit basis, right? That's really what I'm trying to think up, is how do we do this from net profit, not necessarily the payroll. The other thing is like, if she's speaking to startups or folks who don't really have this under control yet, unless you have clean financials, you're not going to see this. And if you're a startup and you try and do this, you're probably not going to have employees because you may not have enough revenue yet. You may be a startup, you're not paying yourself, you're not paying your spouse who's working in the business, and all of a sudden you've got an employee and you want to split this up 3 ways. Everybody's getting a loaf of bread, right? Come on now.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it can speak to everyone. I think if you were to look at corporations, corporations could divvy it out a little bit more and be a little more fair with it. Giant corporations. I'm not talking about just a corporation. So that's kind of my take on it, is if I was to be in a startup shoe, and I heard this advice and I didn't understand what she's talking about, I didn't understand the business financials, and I tried to base my business off of her advice, that would be really terrible advice. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think she's targeting the business that's doing $2+ million a year.
Okay.
2 to 4 million, 2 to 10 million, that range there. You've got 10 to 15 employees working for you, and you're short staffed. Maybe you need to add another 2 to 5 more employees.
Mm-hmm.
And she's saying, well, you can fix this very easily because you're probably taking home, $250,000 a year, $300,000 a year, and your highest paid employee is doing $100,000. Well,
Okay.
Spread it all out. You take a huge pay cut, and everybody else gets a raise, and you're just all on equal footing. The issue I have with this is that then at that point, everybody is also on equal footing responsibility-wise.
Yep.
There are no managers in the facility. And so how does that even work? How do you manage? One, the owner is going to be directly involved in the business. So at that point there, the only reason you have I should say, at that point, the manager is the owner.
Right.
And that manager then manages the entire staff. And the
Right.
only reason why the manager is even exists is because the manager owns 100% of the equity within the business.
Right.
Even though they're not taking home a higher salary. In other words, you're not going to make employee A, the manager, at the same salary as all of their direct reports and expect that to work, because it's not going to.
So I guess you would have to have a culture that really is definitive, if you will, right? Because there's no
culture's not going to overcome that.
There's no opportunity for growth, is what I'm getting at, right? There's no stair step to grow and get to the next level. So you've got to have a culture that says, hey, the way that we grow and the way we go to the next level is we make the business better. I like that premise, right? I think that's pretty cool. I don't think it's financially responsible in some ways. It sounds like she's more financially responsible than you and I, so I don't guess we have much room to talk. But I guess my point in saying that is that there's no trajectory to move forward as there would be in a conventional operation. There's no entry-level person who would come in. It would be very, very hard to bring an apprentice in and pay an apprentice that amount of money. In the auto repair business, it would be really hard because you've got somebody who can't produce, yet they're sharing that income with the other people. She says this like everyone loves it, right? She says it like everyone loves it. And in her business, maybe they do. Maybe they have unskilled labor and everybody's doing a very similar task. However, if you want very, very skilled labor, let's talk about an accountant. Let's talk about an automotive technician, a diagnostician. Let's talk about something like that. And now all of a sudden you're going to ask that person to come on and you're going to ask them to take the same pay as someone who is sweeping the floors, you're going to have a pretty tough time making the business profitable overall in that way. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying I don't know.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There's no hierarchy at that point. There's no, this person has less responsibility than the other person. And the person with a higher responsibility should earn more.
Yes.
That's completely eliminated. That's what I'm saying. Like, the only manager you'll have, the only person with higher responsibility levels is the owner.
Right.
And then everybody else has to be on the same footing. Because who's going to want to step up and take on more responsibility knowing that they're not going to get paid a dime more? And then what happens if the business retracts? Let's say the business is not as successful the following year.
Everybody takes a pay cut, right?
Yeah.
Like,
from
there's
the
no
article,
option.
Yeah, and it's all of a sudden, it's like, hey, $10,000 pay cut for everybody. Well, what do you mean $10,000 pay cut for everyone? It's like, well, we made less money. It's like, okay, the owner doesn't eat that. Everybody eats that. Is that fair? Well, no, not necessarily, because the employees aren't taking the same risk as the business owner. So that doesn't make any sense from that standpoint. Right. And nobody's looking at it as what happens when we start losing money, if we should ever lose money. And then you're absolutely right. There's no expansion. It's not even like there's no opportunity to grow. There's no opportunity for growth for the business. Because at some point, you're not going to be able to manage. Fine, a group of 10 to 15 people, fine. What if it gets to 20 to 25? Right. Like now you are completely crunching your time having to manage that amount of people because you're trying to grow the business and everybody has to get paid the same or whatever, right? And then what happens when you do want to take on another person? Yeah. You're trying to go from 10 employees to 11. Well, that just divides out the profits to 11. That means you're going to take a pay cut so we can hire this person on. And then we want to add a 12th or 13th or 14th. Nobody's going to want to take on, hey, I'm happy making $75,000 a year. Don't hire anybody else because I don't want to take a pay cut. So as the company grow.
Well, and here's the thing is so that's why I'm saying if we base this off of net profit, it seems more responsible, right? And I used to have a real problem with CEOs who took giant salaries. And I think anybody can look at it and say some of them are just exorbitant, right? Like it's too much. But, who was it we were talking to a while back that was talking about what a CEO gives up to be the CEO? They don't have children, right? They may not even have a home that's theirs. They give up an entire life that most people strive for to reach that level in an organization, right? And they earn all of this money, but they take a ton of risk with that money. If things go south, man. Now, in some cases, right, we've seen them, avoid the consequences of things going south. No doubt. I think we hear about those. We don't hear about the ones where the CEO went down with the company, right? It was his ship and it sunk and it was his fault, right? And he went with it. So I think that happens more often than not. We just don't hear nearly as much about it as we would others, right? So I think that sustainability-wise, we've got to look at this from a net profit percentage and say, look, if you want to do profit sharing, let's do profit sharing from the P&L. Let's pay everybody fairly, right? We've got to have different levels, different scales. It may not work in every business like it does in ours. So I can understand maybe she's doing something different. Maybe she's got it set up a little bit different. But it's going to be hard to scale this thing. It's going to be hard to grow this thing from here, no matter what we do. And so I think my big thing is how are you going to grow it? How are you going to base it if it's not off of the P&L and everybody can grow consistently across the growth of the organization, right? It's like having an advisor that their pay is based off of something other than gross profit, because they could go out there and they could sell a ton of stuff, right? Easily sell a ton of stuff, but it doesn't mean you made money on it. The business can still go broke. We talked to an owner just the other day about this, right? It's so easy to do. So I think it's got to be based off of net profit, and then you give them shareholder distributions or however you want to look at it. Make it employee owned, but don't base everybody's salary in that way. I think that's dangerous.
I think employee owned is probably the best route to go.
Yeah.
I think Steve Eck owns X Automotive in Chicago, the Chicago area.
Yeah.
He wanted to step away from the business. but his employees wanted to essentially just run it on their own, right? And
Right.
he was involved, but he's got like 1,000 little side hustles he's doing. And he essentially said, look, I need to make this much. Anything you make past that, you guys get to distribute and keep on your own.
Right.
And I think that absolutely is the best way to do it. We need to hit this dollar amount, and then everybody gets equal distribution of whatever's left over, because at that point it is employee owned. They're taking a shareholder distribution with each employee owning equal percentage of.
And then they just pay tax on it, and it's done. It's over.
They pay tax on it, or they dump it into a tax deferred account, or whatever. But I think that's the best way to do it. And at that point, you can keep growing the business. The way she's got it right now, she's stuck at the amount of employees she's got. She's not going to be able to add any more employees. If the business goes south, everybody is going to look at it sideways. And here's the other thing. She's making money on her TikToks. If you look at how many views she's getting, she's probably making a sizable chunk of money on her TikToks. Is she sharing that? She's leveraging the business into social media money.
And think about this for a minute, right? How many of these do you see, right? We've talked about this on the podcast before. You see everybody's highlight reel. You see what's good in their life on social media. You're not necessarily going to see what's bad. You're not going to see the ugly little secrets, right? We all have them. So I think it's possible that she is sharing the income in this way, but you're not seeing that employee who's like, man, you started with me and you said you were going to do this, and then you hired 5 more people. I can't afford to live for that, right? Like, because you hired these people, you've got other income streams I don't, right? It's very easy to say these things on social media and it take off, but if it's not based in a sustainable operation, right? Like if you've not tested it for sustainability, you can say anything you want. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean it works.
Whoa. Who knew I would make it this far? They hated, they never believe me. Yeah, I would never drop the ball. I know I make it look easy. Yeah, Mayweather with the defense. I don't care what a critic got to say. I got them picking up the pieces.